One of the most disappointing teams in recent memory, the Phoenix Suns. Let's break down their 24-25 season. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and unfortunately my entry wasn't good enough to win Eurovision. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. We're doing the Phoenix Suns review here. Usually on these shows, I'm splitting it up into the guys that are 25 and older and then the under 25s. With the Suns, if I was to do the under 25s, there's like 4 guys. So we've had to bump that age range all the way up to like 29 to be able to get an even split of players across the 2 different segments we're going to do, because they are old and they are bad, and that's not good. Not a good combo. In real NBA news, we're down to 4 teams now, and parity in the NBA is absolutely huge at the moment. And we hear at times from certain players in the media about ratings and small markets and all this nonsense. Look at the teams. Oklahoma City, Minnesota, wow, thriving markets. The New York Knicks, that's a huge market. Obviously, Knicks have been terrible for a long time. And then the Indiana Pacers. These are teams who have made the most of the right opportunities with right team building and a lot of those teams actually, it's interesting, isn't it? Because some of those teams are incredibly deep and run deep rotations. The Thunder, the Pacers, and some are very shallow. The Knicks. And the Wolves are different because they're deep to about 8, where all those guys are great, and there's nothing after that. So different team building styles. Medium markets, which again shouldn't matter to anybody, but people try to force it to mean anything. And if you're good, and if your team is good, you can have success. It doesn't matter where the team is situated. And it's awesome because these teams, 3 of them, have never won a title. I'm not counting Seattle for Oklahoma City. Seattle will count when Seattle gets back. And the Knicks haven't won since what? The 70s? 50 years? Close enough to 50 years? I think it's about right. It's great. It's awesome. Can't wait. Now we're talking about a team that should have been in the mix and has obviously never won a title, but has made the finals a few times, and now I don't really know where they go. We're going to talk about the Phoenix Suns. It is World Fair Play Day. So there you go. Play fair. The world demands it of you. We're here to talk about this Suns team, which again, it's just... They're at the moment, me recording this on May the 19th, we don't know who their head coach will be. My man, Josh Longstaff from the Charlotte Hornets, has been rumored as one of the candidates. Chris Quinn from the Miami Heat as well, after they fired Mike Budenholzer. Also, by the way, they demoted James Jones, who has been, I think, quite a bad GM. He's made a lot of very questionable decisions. The whole franchise has made a lot of questionable decisions. Now, not all of them is Jones, but Jones was making bad decisions before Ishbia took over. So it's not just that. So he has been demoted. He is not the main guy there now. So a lot of changes are coming, and there's going to be more that come. We'll talk about a little bit more of that later on. But let's just have a look at what actually happened for this team. They finished with a actually putrid record of 36 and 46. The vibes on this team were all-time bad. Budenholzer didn't fully implement Budenholzer ball. He didn't fully implement his scheme. There were obviously disconnects between him and the players. Yusuf Nurkic, Bradley Beal, seemingly Kevin Durant, maybe Devin Booker. It just didn't go well at all. So they're looking for their, 4th coach in 4 years now? And I don't know who that's going to be. And also, they didn't make the playoffs. They didn't make the play-in. And they weren't in the lottery because their pick has been traded, which was traded to the Nets as part of the Durant deal, which then ended up in Houston, so they don't have a lottery pick. They do have pick 29, which comes via the Cavs, and they do have pick 52, which is not going to mean that much. So they've never been a team that's invested heavily into scouting or development or anything like that. But they're going to need to start figuring out what they're doing, because it's not a very bright or rosy scenario. In terms of free agency, they do have Vasilije Micic on their team. Yes, he came across from the Hornets in the Nurkic deal, and he's got an $8.1 million team option. And I would say there is zero chance that the team is picking that up. The only reason you would suggest they could is to be a part of trades, because we know that they're dealing with second apron limitations, but I'm guessing that Micic is just going across back to Europe is my expectation that he won't be playing in the NBA next season. He's clearly not going to be worth $8.1 million to the Suns as a player, but whether that salary slot is important or not, that's what we find out. There's two guys that are non-guaranteed. They've got $0 guaranteed on their deals for next season. I think both of those will be guaranteed. It's the big fella, Cody Martin, and then the even bigger fella, BDNR, Nick Richards, who came across as the savior for fantasy teams and for the Phoenix Suns, and then just turned out to be Nick Richards. And he's $0 guaranteed. I would expect that they guarantee that and bring him back, but I think we're all well aware that he's not good. So, yeah, what do you do with that? And then unrestricted free agents. There are some guys who played rotation roles on this team. Number one is the cockroach Mason Plumlee, who you wouldn't believe it. He's 35 years old now, and I still don't believe that he was a better center than Nurkic. I'm not sure he's better than Richards, and he's very limiting in terms of what you're able to do. Whether they bring him back or not, I'm not sure. What about Tyus Jones, who I think is incredibly overrated as a player and as a fantasy guy, and lost that starting job, which the signing to me literally never made sense in terms of what they were trying to make him do. And I think that's a really key part of all this off-season stuff and movement and valuing for fantasy and for real life, was when you look at someone like Tyus Jones, you go, whoa, you got Tyus Jones, he's great, he's on a minimum. Yeah, that's cool, but the value, I guess, is there. But when Tyus Jones is on a minimum, then you have to start him, and that limits the value of the other players that are there by putting them into different positions or different spots and reducing their value. Is it actually worth it? And I'm not saying that Tyus Jones was the reason that Phoenix was bad, because that's not true. But the fact that Jones would come in and he would start would mean that Devin Booker would move more off ball and Bradley Beal would move more off ball, and he played less minutes or fewer minutes for Grayson Allen, a guy who's elite shooting the year before, was really key to providing some solid value. That means something. That has an impact. So, hey, we've got this great bargain of Tyus Jones. If they didn't have Tyus Jones, they would have been more into starting Beal and Booker and then playing a Ryan Dunn alongside them for more defense, and maybe that works out. So everything can be looked at singularly in a vacuum. Tyus Jones, better than a minimum contract. Yep, absolutely. Was it to do with the second apron and CJ McCollum's terrorism ways? No, of course it wasn't. He was offered more money. Other teams wanted him. He wanted this opportunity here to prove himself. I think he proved that he's not a starting point guard. So teams not offering him giant bags to be a starter, I think were proven correct. And that's where that context comes in. Him on a minimum, better than a minimum. Him on a minimum on this team where it forces other things into different positions, is it good? Not really. And sorry to pick on Tyus Jones, but I think that's just more of we'll just put good guys together and figure it out. And it doesn't always work that way. Damion Jones has had 2 completely wasted years in Phoenix. He was a pretty good player, then hurt his knee and he's done nothing for 2 seasons. Bol, I think we're all well aware where he sits now. He had some opportunities and then that disappeared pretty quickly. And the last one is Tyus Jones's older, worse doppelganger, Monte Morris, whose back injury 2 years ago, I think might have just rooted his career as well. He was absolutely terrible this season and not sure he's back or even on another team. So, yeah, there's some question marks. What do they do with no Plumlee? What do they do with no Jones? And then we'll see with those other guys. So it is going to be intriguing. In terms of restricted guys, there are 3 players that are restricted. They're all their two-way guys who just Jalen Bridges didn't play. I thought he should have been drafted and I thought he could be a solid player. Nothing I saw this season would suggest that was correct, so maybe that was wrong. Ty Washington, who's bounced around the league a lot. He had a couple of okay moments, but whatever. And then Colin Gillespie would have been converted off his two-way had the Suns made the playoffs so he could play. They didn't, so they didn't. But I think he will be on the main roster next season. He showed at least some flashes to be an interesting enough player that you keep him on the full-time roster next season. But they're all restricted guys heading into next season. We're going to come back and talk about some of the older guys on this team. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Monarch Money. You go in, you check your bank account, you go, where's the money? What happened? Where has it all gone? I had more money than this, but Monarch Money allows you now to be able to track where that money goes. Online shopping, eating out, entertainment. It can be easy to lose track of that, and Monarch Money works as your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. It's not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center tracking all of your accounts, all of your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So you can stop just managing your money, stop only managing your money, and start building your wealth. That all-in-one convenience of juggling, instead of juggling those multiple banking and financial apps, you can put it all into the one spot so you can check everything in that one place. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. So, like I said, we're talking Phoenix Suns, and we went to the 29 and older grouping to try and get an even split, because that's part of the problem. This team is bad. There's no young prospects, and their guys are old. And that brings us to talking about the oldest. Is he the oldest? Yeah, the oldest. And the guy that's probably not going to be playing here next season, and that is Kevin Durant. I was out on Durant this season. I was like, okay, he's old. I think Mike Budenholzer is going to reduce his minutes. I was very worried about his drop in free throw percentage and free throw attempt rate over the second half of last season. And to me, that made him like a second round player. Now, he was better than that. So I was wrong on one major part of that. I was wrong that I thought Budenholzer would actually try and preserve him and play him 33 minutes. Because Durant, at age 37, played 37 minutes a game. He had 29 usage. He ended up as the 12th ranked player in categories and 18th in points leagues. Of course, he didn't play at the end of the season because he was injured. And what I would really draw your attention to here, he averaged 29 points. He averaged 6 rebounds and 4 assists. He shot 84 from the line, so it's a little bit better. An elite 43 from 3. But his DPM delta is 0%, 0th percentile. That's troubling. Like, what does that mean? Does it mean that he's the worst player in the league? No, but it means that in terms of where he was at the start of the season to where he was at the end of the season, nobody in the NBA had a bigger drop-off in their overall impact. Which, that makes sense. Like, the cliff. We're here. Like, we're there for the cliff for him. He's 37. Again, is he bad? No. Of course he's not. Defensively, he had some very big drops. Look at that. Deflections, 11th percentile. Shot contests, 8th percentile. He just, I won't say he stopped trying, but something changed a lot. And his offensive low was at 90th percentile. He was only 68th percent on ball, and you'd probably want a little bit more than that. And he's going to be the prize of the trade market. People are going to want, or maybe Giannis actually, but people are going to want to trade for Kevin Durant. But what do you get from Kevin Durant? Will he age well? Yeah. He's already aging well. He's 37. He shot 43% from 3. But if you're banking on Durant in a trade as being a top 5 player, that's not a thing anymore. And I know that I will not have any interest in drafting Kevin Durant in fantasy in the first round. And I'll probably double down again and not want to draft him in the second round. So again, on a per-game basis, that was incorrect for me last season. But he did get hurt. He is older. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be interested in doing that next year. Interestingly, before the trade deadline, he was 17th. So he wasn't really that first-round guy. Overall, for the year, he was. And in points leagues, 18th. 37 minutes a night doesn't make any sense for him. Like, it just is a ridiculously large number for a man this big, or this old, and with this many injuries. So I'm going to be out on him again. I will be back-end second rounding almost definitely in that range, maybe even round 3, because we saw a hit. And there is going to be something else that hits as well. And if he becomes a 33-minute player, it's a big drop. So that is what I'd be very, very cautious of. Him leaving this team, if that is what happens, well, we don't know what impact that has because we don't know who would be coming back. Is there any corresponding moves? Could they convince Bradley Beal to be traded? Would they move off of Devin Booker? What the hell do they do? I don't actually know what they will do or how they'll approach this. Most of the time when Phoenix approaches something as of late, it's the incorrect way to do it. So we'll see exactly where they go, but they are a team that is in incredible flux. Speaking of Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is very easy to criticize. It's very easy to criticize Bradley Beal as ruining the Suns season because he has a no-trade deal and he refused to be traded. You know what? That's not his problem. That's your problem, Washington. That's your problem, Phoenix, for taking on that no-trade clause. Bradley Beal did everything that was correct for him. Did everything that was correct for him and his career. And if he didn't want to be traded, he doesn't have to be traded to do the Suns a favor. He's like, no. So they tried to, honestly, and I don't have the 100% proof of this, but it felt like that they just tried to ice him out. Beal, we want you gone. We're going to come off the bench. You're not good anymore. You suck. You're on the bench. Ryan Dunn's starting over you. Probably better if you're elsewhere, yeah? You don't want to be here. That's what it felt like. Didn't work. So now what do they do? Now how do they go? So he's on a terrible contract. Absolutely. You don't blame him for that. Because if someone came to you and said, bro, here's $50 million, plus you have control of where you play through your career, you're going to be, actually, I'm probably not worth it. Can I have less with the chance that I get ripped out of my family and my home mid-season? Can we negotiate that? No one's doing it. So Beal, 100% in the right. And I think without the nonsense, without the toxicity, he would have actually had a much better season. He wasn't that good, and much like Durant, like his advanced stats, big hit. Like 3rd percentile in DPM delta, horrible. 9th percentile in drip delta, horrible. His time on ball, 75th percent. His offensive load down to 76th percentile. He used to be way higher. He averaged only 17, 3, and 3.7 assists on 50 and 39%. Look, 50% from the field, unbelievably good. 39 from 3, great. 80 from the line, you'd hope for a little bit more. He had 1.1 steals. But this is also one of those things, and when we talked a couple of episodes ago about the Raptors, about trying to fit Barnes, Barrett, Quickly, Ingram together, you can't do it. You can't do it and have the numbers maintained. Beal came in as the 3rd guy here, and even with Jones handling the ball, he couldn't maintain 5 assists or 22 points. He couldn't do it. So this stuff just isn't able to exist all at the same time. The 3rd guy and the 4th guy in these sort of triumvirates, quartets, they take hits. Now, do I expect that Beal is going to be able to bump back up from 22 usage? It really would depend. Like if Durant goes and it's just pieces that comes back, then yeah, he'd have to go up to 27%. His assist rate would rise. We would want to trust him for injury? Not really. He has injured again with multiple soft tissue problems and ankle issues, and that is a real concern for him now. He only played 53 games, but he ended up, I would say that people would look at Bradley Beal and say what a disaster it was. He was the 83rd ranked player. It's not dreadful. He was 75th before the trade deadline. Points league's not great, 30 points a game, 100th ranked player. That's not ideal, obviously. But like if I was drafting and I was in the last round 11, round 12, that sort of area, and Beal was around, I'd take him under the maybe potential that he has 25 usage and that the assists go back to 5 and maybe you get 65 games out of him and he's the 60th best player. I don't think that's like it feels like he's a million years old. He's 32. He's not that old. Yeah, he's on the downside. Yeah, he declined a lot. A lot of that is situational though. And there's a chance that it never goes, not a chance, it is never going back to what it was in Washington, never happening. But from what we see here, I wouldn't be ruling Beal out that, yeah, he's never able to improve from this. I actually think next season he is a very, very large chance to be better than this number, or better than those numbers. And they're the two big guys over the age of 29. And now, like, even though I was sort of high on this team in the preseason, and you look at the roster, you go, yeah, why? Because the next guy is Royce O'Neale. Like what? Royce O'Neale is 32. He's older than you think as well. O'Neale played 75 games. He was 142nd ranked player. He's one of those players that the old standard 9-cat rankings on Yahoo will tell you is way better than he is. He's not, very clearly. He is also one of the most inconsistent players in the entirety of the NBA. He shot 41% from 3. Okay, that's really good. But he was only 42 from the field because he couldn't hit twos. His free throws are down to 73. He used to be a guy that got a lot of steals. He had 0.9 of them here. He averaged 9 points on 16 usage in 24 minutes. He had opportunities to start when Durant would go down, or when Beal would go down. And then he'd come off the bench and play 17 minutes. And then he'd start and play 29. And then he'd shoot 60%. Then he'd shoot 4%. I think he had a stretch when the first injury happened maybe to Durant, where he shot 30% in like 7 straight games. He is always going to be one of those guys who go, oh, but what about O'Neale? He'll have those little moments. You know who it's like, actually? It's a little bit like Harrison Barnes, where he'll have the little stretch where we'll go, well, we've got to add O'Neale. He's playing 30 minutes a night. He averaged 15 points. He's got 6 assists a game in 3 games with 2 steals and 4 threes, and that's great. And then it's 18 minutes with 2 points for the next 2 weeks. And he's old and it's not getting better. The advanced stats didn't like him. His offensive load is well down. Even his defensive stuff is not as good as it used to be. So I do think that maybe for like another year or two, Royce O'Neale is going to be able to bewilder us or bewitch us with some of those interesting performances. But overall, I think the book is there. Inconsistent shooting. Can't finish anymore, giggity. 2-pointers are bad. 3s are up and down. The passing has shown improvements, but defensively, he's not the same player anymore. And he's just not a starting caliber player any longer. And that's okay. You can't always maintain that, but he's 32 now. It's just not going to be at the same level that it has been in the past. We've got more guys that we're going to talk about. It's not as exciting, but we're still going to talk about it. What a thrill that is. Let's talk about Cody Martin, who was one of the players coming across in the Yusuf Nurkic deal. Martin played pretty well as a member of the Charlotte Hornets, got hurt, and then when he came across to Phoenix, didn't play early on. He didn't end up playing a huge amount in Phoenix. He ended up as the 177th ranked player, though, over the course of the season in 22 minutes a night, 53 games. He is 30 now. Why is Cody Martin able to be somewhat successful? It's hard to tell, honestly. You look at the numbers, what's good about this? It's 1.1 steal, it's 0.6 blocks, like fine, whatever. It's 71 from the line and 42 from the field, like whatever. These aren't strong numbers. He just usually is able to get, like, here's a 3 assist game, here's a 2 steal game, here's a random 4 steal game, here's a 10-point game. He defends usually pretty well. He's not going to do much offensively. Defensively is where it comes from. The passing stuff for him is usually pretty good, and he's never going to be a shooter, but he's a solid enough passer. But, like, he's not a guy that you want to rely upon to be a starter. He's the sort of guy that coaches do love when he's able to be healthy and he can be chucked in there. But, like, on this team, you've got O'Neale, you've got Ryan Dunn, and I would expect that those guys get priority over what Cody Martin does. If you're in any sort of deeper league or dynasty league, there's always going to be moments where you go, oh, maybe I consider Cody Martin here. There's a little bit of value as he goes 6, 6, and 5 with 3 steals across a 2-week period. Happens. But, is this new situation great for him? Is another team going to lean into grabbing him? Probably not. So it's sort of just, he sits there, he plays his 22 minutes a night, his knees are basically rooted, so he can't push more than that. And that's sort of who he is. It's interesting, these sort of players, and Royce O'Neale even more so, like, one of the guys that's going to get overpaid this offseason probably is going to be Dorian Finney-Smith, because you need those sort of players, a guy that can be a low-usage defensive guy who shoots and can move the ball sometimes. But even Finney-Smith fell off, but not as much as like an O'Neale or even a Martin, who's a much smaller version of those sort of players who can be indispensable. But we see these guys that get pushed into these roles, and they're so needed, it's so important to have those players. But they're not good players, and the fall-off can be immense. Torrey Craig, Suns legend, he's one of those guys as well. And now what the hell is it? Robert Covington was the elite level of that sort of a player. But when he fell off, it was done. He was just cooked. One of the guys who's been able to maintain, which is interesting because Nick Batum, off topic here completely, Nick Batum, he wasn't a superstar, but he was a very good offensive player. He was a very good player, signed that contract that, of course, like Bradley Beal, got the scorn heaped on him. But then he transitioned into the sort of player that's so required. Whereas these guys like Martin, like O'Neale, they start off at the level that Batum's at now, and then when the fall comes, it just makes them entirely unplayable. And that's sort of where we're getting to here. Speaking of unplayable, he wasn't, but Grayson Allen, to me, was one of the easiest fades of all time this season. He was a huge surprise the year before that I did not see coming. He shot 45% from 3, and you know my theory usually on outliers. The top 1 or 2 players in each category are usually going to fall back a lot. So he was never going to maintain that. The addition of Tyus Jones meant that somebody would have to move to the bench. And that somebody was obviously Grayson Allen. And so he wouldn't be able to play the 35 minutes a night that he played. And all of that played out. Not only that, but he had injuries. He's played only 24 minutes a night. He played 64 games. He's 30. His usage was down at 18 and he shot 43 from 3. Which again, exactly proves my point. 43 from 3 is an unbelievably good number. It's not 46. And while 3% you might say is nothing, if you're a 37% three-point shooter or 34% three-point shooter, the perspective on that is very different. So when you're hitting outlier numbers, unless you're Luke Kennard, who is the outlier-proof guy, or Wemby in blocks, it's very hard to maintain those numbers. Plus, he played 10 fewer minutes a game. Now, again, things can change here. Does Durant move on and then Allen goes back and starts? Is Jones gone and we go back to Booker at point guard? All possible. And if we saw Grayson Allen in a role where we go, well, he's going to have to start and play 33 minutes a night here, then yeah, he would become interesting as a later round player, 15, 16-point scorer, 2, 3 triples a game on good percentages. That's all possible. But this season was just not there. 10.5, 3, and 2 is just not going to cut it. The steals weren't going to cut it. Percentages dropped back, and the minutes were well down. Pretty obvious stuff what happened here. Shot worse, played less, everything down. Production, not as good, clearly. He's never going to be a defensive guy. He needs minutes, he needs volume, and he needs to be elite. And he is at shooting. But there is elite, and then there's hyper elite. And that's, you can rely upon elite. You can't rely upon hyper elite, usually. As, again, a pretty general rule. Mason Plumlee, yeah, this guy came across. At the start of the season, there were a lot of people like he's going to be better than Jusuf Nurkic and start over him. And I was like, I think Mason Plumlee is way worse than Jusuf Nurkic. And to a degree, I would say that I am both right and wrong. I don't think that Mason Plumlee showed anything in these games to suggest that he's an NBA starting center, or honestly, that he was better than Nurkic. But it's not just all about that, is it? It's about, are you pissing off your coach and getting dumped onto the Charlotte Hornets? Plumlee didn't even start every game anyway. We saw Osa Ighodaro in there sometimes. He had 11 usage. He played 18 minutes. He was the 232nd ranked player. He just did Plumlee things. 4 points, 6 rebounds. Not a good shot blocker. Bad at free throws. 62% from the field. Great. He was better than he was in his previous season in the LA. His Darko and his drip deltas were way up, so he did show a little bit, he was able to improve on what he did in previous seasons, but he's not a good defender. He's used to be a much better passer. He gets in the way on offense, even though he has dropped his usage well down. He's a backup center at best. And yes, somebody will sign him and hope that he's able to do something as their backup, but if you want him to be a guy minute splitting at center, or to even be a starter, you're deluding yourself. You're absolutely deluding yourself as to what this guy can bring. I don't think there's ever going to be a time that we care about him in fantasy again, outside of the occasional run, and he will do that. He'll move into a starting lineup. He'll have a 12 and 10 game on 80% shooting. He'll have 4 assists, and people will scurry, and they'll grab him. And then he'll inevitably fall off because he's not good enough to maintain that role or that level of production. Let's talk about Monte Morris, but there's not a lot to talk about here. I just think the back injury in Minnesota killed him. He was bad when he returned from... it was in Detroit, then Minnesota, all over the last couple of years. And then he came here, and there was an opportunity for him to get some minutes, and then they, of course, signed Tyus Jones over him. 18 usage, 13 minutes, outside the top 400 in fantasy. 5-1, and then only 1.6 assists? Bro, what happened to this guy's assist numbers? Passing creation volume, 64th percentile. That's not very good. He used to do way more than that. His shooting is 36% from 3, which is fine, but he just doesn't look the same. I don't think that he can be a backup point guard anymore if those injuries continue to persist or continue to make him look nowhere near that player he was, but he was always that sort of guy who was a low usage, I'm not going to take risks on my shots or my passes, which is going to lead to a great assist-to-turnover ratio, which at times, assist-to-turnover ratio is important. At other times, it's actually not good. For the reason is if you are working and preserving an assist-to-turnover ratio, it means you're not making any creative, incisive, or damaging passes. You're making safe handoffs, the Tyus Jones style. Here, let me give it to you, and you take one dribble to the free throw line and you shoot a mid-ranger. What does that do? Anybody could do that. Literally anybody could make that pass. Are you trying to sizzle one in between two defenders for a guy cutting baseline? That's the value add on those things. But that leads to more turnovers. Whereas these sort of guys like Jones and Morris and these high assisted turnover players, which sometimes can be frothed, it often means they're just safe and boring and not creative and not actually generating good, exciting offense for their team. They are average to below average most of the time. That is how I like to view that. Yeah, there are players, Chris Paul, who's an elite assisted turnover player, but he's the elite who does create the high-level passing, the opens things up and makes the offense better while also not turning it over because that's how good he is. That high assisted turnover ratio is very different to other assisted turnover ratios. As for Morris, I just don't think it's happening for him anymore. We can talk about another point guard who this man played so little in Phoenix that going through my photo database that we have access to at USA Today Sports, there is not a single photo of this man in a Phoenix Suns uniform, so I've got to use it while he's playing for Charlotte. Vasilije Micic, who, like I said, has got an $8.1 million team option, which will almost certainly be declined, and he'll be back in Europe, I'm guessing. He had a couple of okay moments in Charlotte earlier in the season, but overall, his time in the NBA has been unsuccessful. 41 games, 19 minutes, 31 now. He had 21 usage. He averaged 3 assists in those 19 minutes, which is fine. He shot 36% from 3, well up from his first season. But look at the Darko and the drip deltas. 2nd and 9th percentile. He didn't get better. He got worse. His passing volume and his time on ball is high, but do you want that? The shooting's not reliable enough. The usage is whatever. Defensively, he's not there. There are other guys to use. He just isn't going to be around next season. So we had a nice little, was it nice? A 2-year run of Micic in the NBA, starting in Oklahoma City, and then Charlotte and Phoenix. That's twice he's been dumped at the trade deadline. And I'm guessing he's back over to Europe, and we just never see him over in the NBA again. And the last guy we're talking about here is Damion Lee, a guy that, again, we're not going to see. He didn't play at all in the previous season. He came back this season from the meniscus injury, and what did we see him for? 25 games? 6 minutes a game? He used to be a 40% three-point shooter. 24% this season. He averaged 3 points a game. 37% from the field. I don't know where he goes now. He's 33 years of age. I'm going to be very surprised if he's on another team next season. So the Suns are clearing out space, but once again, they're limited. What do they do with the apron stuff? It's a very tough spot to be in. I would love if they elevated like a Jalen Bridges into one of these roster spots, because Morris and Lee and Plumlee and the guy we're going to talk about in the next show, like Bol, what's the point of them being around? I don't know. I don't need to go too much into Damion Lee. We didn't see hardly anything from him, understandably so. And that's going to leave us where we are with that. Like, what do we get next out of him? Nothing. Is he even going to play in the NBA? Probably not. They're just an extremely weird team, the Phoenix Suns, and one that is ripe for many changes across this offseason. We are going to come back later on today with another discussion on the Suns and guys like Devin Booker and Tyus Jones and the GOAT Bol and Nick Richards. But they are just a team that, honestly, for fantasy, we shouldn't have many high hopes for, because the players there aren't good. There's too many question marks about what they do, and guys that required certain things to go right to have value. But as always, with any sort of team that we're looking at or any sort of fantasy production that we're looking at, when we're taking advantage of things from a fantasy point of view, well, that's what you want to do. You want to take advantage of when situations arise. Hey, there's a spot here. This guy might play 10 more minutes. He might get 4 more shots a game. He might get more ball handling. And the value rises. And that's all the stuff that we do over the next few months in the off-season, when we see how they develop and all that sort of thing. So we're back later on. Subscribe and you'll never miss an episode, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.